Spitfire Audio is a bunch of professional composers making professional composers' tools, which means they can be a little bit pricey. So when we do sales, it's a bit of an opportunity for our community to come together to celebrate the fact that there are points in the year when it can be affordable to move into these professional tools. So in celebration of this year's spring sale, we're going to be doing something called The Probe. It's going to be on this channel with Oliver, Louis, Paul and myself answering probing questions, and we really do encourage you to ask those questions that you've always been scared to ask of us. Be brutal, be probing. Join us for The Probe this Sunday, 1700 hours BST. Please place your questions in the comments down below. I'd like to share a pet peeve with you, if I may, and that is the overuse of the phrase victim of its own success. It is an onerous oxymoron that willingly admits that all you have prepared for is either failure or, worse still, some kind of moderate outcome. Pianobook is not a victim, but is hugely successful in a way that is totally unexpected. Because if you recall, the very seedling, the very kernel idea at the beginning of this was a sample developer making a sample library in plain sight. Look at what it has become. And I have some news for you. We've made 300 instruments. So I think it's time to move on a chapter. To make sure that Pianobook is sustainable in the future, we have to make sure that our instruments are as brilliant as they possibly can be. So in a moment, I'm going to take you through, and I know it sounds like me saying, time to eat your veg, but actually I think this is one of the most beautiful parts of crafting a virtual instrument, beta testing. And then Stephen Talamy's going to take us through how best we go about giving it the best chance of being marketed fully on the Pianobook site. Also, I just want to share with you, I don't know if you're aware that I've been doing these Instagram things on the Pianobook Instagram account, Pianobook01. Basically, I've been capturing a sunrise every morning as a means of grabbing a beautiful bit of visiony stuff that I can use to promote all of these wonderful instruments. So do follow us on Instagram, and I'm hoping at the end of this lockdown craziness that we can then use Instagram as a means of communication between the community. And I have some more social media-y news for you regarding Pianobook in a minute. But first, beta testing. Been speaking to violinists or cellists who use like those Stradivari, which are worth millions and millions and millions, and I just go, what is it about them that makes them so special? And instead of giving me the kind of a romantic notion of what it is to play an instrument that's worth maybe $10 million, they all say the same thing. It's just easier to play. It makes you sound good. And this is for all professional musicians. The room they play in, the microphone setup that you put them in, the instrument they're playing, all adds to the performance they're going to give, the feeling they have when playing something. So for me, it's just really difficult to play. It feels to me that the samples are 60 years old, and it's like even climbing to the top of the stairs. First thing I do is pull up an instrument that I trust and I know. And this instrument is crap, but I've been playing it live for maybe 21, 22 years. It's responsive, but also responsible. A lot of mix engineers will have their test piece of music when they're mixing in a new room. I know a lot of people use Star Wars. They'll just blurt it through the speakers to understand a room. So if you can find an instrument, sample instrument that you're familiar with, that's a great calibration tool. And the immediate thing is the general level of the palm muted is quiet. So that's going to make you feel out of breath already because you're physically having to play it hard to get any noise out of it. So here's the first gotcha. You can see I've actually dialed that back minus 20. So let's take that up to 0 dB. I think that for me, what I really want to be doing is I want to be hitting peak in Logic if I'm really hammering like a bunch of notes. So we're clipping just there, but I'm never really going to be playing like that. So next thing, again, with my test EP, I'm going to put them both into record. It's really laggy, so I'm going to try and push it into the samples a little bit more. So let's just have a little look at that. Take EP out of record, and we're going to take it, it's at 22,000 samples at the moment, so I'm going to take it to 2400, like that. And you can see that that's closer, and I'm going to copy that to all of the zones. So a lot better. Let's put the EP in. Now you can hear that there's still a delay there, so let's go in a bit, and you can see that's really going into the sample. Maybe just 25. Now you can hear that's tight. However, I do think it's very likely we're losing some of the characteristics of the sample. And this is what makes good samples great samples, and why great samples are always a little bit laggier, and that is because they actually have the beginning of the note. So it's incredibly clipped sounding. It's lost a lot of its character. Let's immediately take it back so you can compare. Much, much better. This is a kind of perennial battle with creation of samples, is how laggy you make it versus kind of responsiveness versus how much character you're willing to chop out of that all-important beginning of the note. Right, next thing to do is a little bit more automaton. I think that these things are much better done by hand than running a series of tests in Logic, but it'd be very interesting to know if you do have any MIDI tests that you'd like to share. But I'm just going to run up chromatically and test that all of the notes are at the right pitch centers. So what I'm actually going to do is turn the electric piano down. Now do remember that we've got 3 dynamic layers and 3 round robins. So we're going to do this 3 times, quietly, and then like midly, and then loudly. And because we're not sampled either chromatically or diatonically, I'll cover all of the round robins within each pitch center. So there's a problem there. So you can actually see that I've pitched those down by 5 semitones. So we just need to make sure that is correct for all the round robins. Now, the thing that will usually cause that will be a titling error. So often I'll get the note number wrong. Okay, let's do medium. Okay, and loud. Great. You can hear that there's some lumpy problems going on, which we're going to go and try and catch. So next up, we're going to check that all the round robins are working. And then it's really important to switch your reference instrument off at this point. Quietly. medium. There's one missing there. There's one missing there as well. It's on one of the round robins. Okay, I think it's round robin 3 because it's not showing up. Oh, there we go. We've got it missing. Again, this will usually, more times than not, be an error in titling. So let's just drag that. Brilliant. Now there was another. So that's interesting. That's one of those areas where it's actually there. And you can see, now this is a gotcha that I've put in there. I've taken this back by minus 25 dB. But this is where you may have to just... Jeepers creepers. Feel your way through it until it becomes less lumpy. So I'm just going to take that to 0 dB. Okay, so let's just have a look at, are the levels even? Now, this is when the kind of machine testing, if you will, of each note is more, it's more about how does it play, really. So I'll tend to have just a bit of a play around, seeing if any notes are jumping out, play lots of notes of differing velocity. There's a lump there. That's obviously very easy for me to spot because I can just spot where I've basically artificially boosted it and bring that back to 0. Right, next thing to ask yourself is it pianoforte? Is it quiet when you play quietly and loud when you play loudly? Now I can hear that it's activating all of the samples. And I like that you really have to go that extra mile to get the top one. But I would say the relative levels between them, well, it's just it feels compressed. It's my kind of innate sense as a piano player of things not feeling dynamically responsive. So let's just have a look down here. I think what the mistake often happens is people go too far. So actually when you're playing, it actually totally disappears into nothing. So it's just... The next question I ask is it tight? And you do this by playing kind of chords together. And if they sound loose when you're playing everything together, you know that you're going to have to tighten up certain areas. I'm just going to have to fudge this. I'm going to find, let's say, that one there. You'll hear that one note's not playing in time with the other. And again, this is all just lots of trial and error. The more that you play with it, the more you do just these little tweaks. This is the polishing section. It's just stepping back from your canvas and looking and going in. And the more work you spend polishing, the more you'll just get to this magical moment where you just go, yeah, this really feels like an instrument. Okay, polyphony, which isn't going to be massively demanding on an instrument like this because the notes are very short. But the default in Contact is still a miserable 32, and I would take that up as a standard up to 200. I heard a track on the Pianobook Instagram today. It has got some heavy sustains on it, and the channel stealing on it was insane. So just great to put that up to 200, because often it'll be something that people won't immediately attach to. Oh, it's a note limitation thing, and they'll just go, oh, this is a bit crap. So put it up to 200. People can always put it back if they want to. And finally, make sure it's saved. Do save as beta tested. Now I'm going to save with patch only. This is a real gotcha, as well as the absolute sample paths. The number of times that I have to load stuff from Pianobook and it simply can't find the samples because it's basically looking on your hard drive, not mine. So if you don't save absolute sample paths, it'll look for them. If you save it with the samples, I think it's worth loading up and then resaving as patch only, because I believe this also automatically save with absolute sample paths. Please correct me if I'm wrong down below. So there's a bunch of different versions of this to download down in the links below and from pianobook.co.uk. Original version that I was happy with. There's the beta one, which is full of the gotchas. See if you can seek those out. And there is the beta tested OK version. Be interested to see how you feel that compares to the version I got to previously. There's also, for Logic users, an EXS version as well. You may want to try the differences between the two, see what you think. To use a scuba diving term, I think buddying up can be a really brilliant way of beta testing samples, maybe swapping samples between other members of the community. This is so people can really give you a sense of objectivity, help you with that snow deafness, howlers, suggestions, that kind of thing. If there's something that we're really struggling with, is people uploading multiple versions of the same instruments once they've given it a little tweak here and there. Practice delayed gratification in that respect, possibly. But also something that lets quite a lot of the samples down is noise. They're beautiful recordings, but you get the build-up of noise that you always get with samples, and not all of us are in possession of noise reduction software. So maybe buddying up with someone who does have this and can help you there would also be excellent. The final thing is, if you do it as a Contact 6 instrument, and I've made this mistake often, you will have less people being able to use it. In fact, I want to talk about Contact at the end of this video, some important thoughts for you to possibly think about. And I always have the best intentions. I always build these things in Contact 5, but I inevitably will boot it up into Contact 6, not realizing, do a few little tweaks and then save over the top. And we all know about Contact and its backwards compatibility. So next up, Stephen Tallamy is going to take us through how best to prepare and upload your samples to the Pianobook site. So 1, they get up on the site, but 2, they get up there in a timely fashion.
So let's get this instrument ready for uploading to Pianobook. So on the Pianobook website, on the contribute section, there's a little checklist here which we're going to go through, and I think the number one issue that we generally have is people are missing out having a photo embedded in their zip file of the right type. So if you look at the website, you can see we're using these images throughout. All of the images, we put them into a black and white style of image. We overlay the text in a white text over the top of it. If you don't supply a photo, it's not going to end up on Pianobook because we can't use it without a photo. We need something. One of the other issues we sometimes get with these photos is what gets submitted is just a very low resolution photo. That sort of thing isn't going to really work for us because it's just not going to look very good at these larger sizes. So I think Christian has supplied a few photos. Let's take a look at these of the Schimmel. So here is a problematic photo. If this was the only one supplied, it's in the wrong kind of aspect ratio because we're going to use a 16:9 ratio on the website. Let's take a look at that here. You can see that if I immediately come in here and crop this to any 16:9 window, you can see I'm really going to lose most of the detail. I can't really find a crop point that's going to work nicely that you're actually going to see what's going on with this instrument. So this is particularly when we get guitar samples. People quite often take a portrait image and we really need something landscape, 16:9 ratio, so that we can use it on the website. So that's one kind of problematic photo that we get. I think there's another example here. So this type of photo here is slightly problematic as well because in this example, when we look at it and we make it black and white, we're going to have a real problem with the white text overlay because the middle of the picture is very light. Let me just mock that up very quickly. So if I were to put in a name of instrument, Schimmel, you can see already the problem we've got is that you can't really read the name of the instrument over that. So ideally we don't want at the very center of the image a very light color because it's not going to work very well. So the ideal type of image that you would submit to the website would be one that's ideally already in a 16:9 ratio, already black and white, and it doesn't have anything in the middle of the image. So let's take a look at the selection that we've got here. This one's quite good because we're doing a mute. It actually shows in the image what's going on, but there's enough visual interest. Let's see if this works. So that's just as a mock-up, but when we send it in, we don't want to be sending it in with a text overlay because we are going to be adding the overlay on the website. So please don't be adding text to the image. We'll add it afterwards so that we have everyone's font looking the same. Another small issue that we sometimes see is people are either uploading individual files, so they're not putting things all into one zip file, or they're using a RAR format. And so, sorry, Keith, to point out this particular one, we did fix this in the end, but you can see that on different computers, the RAR format will not automatically open. In this case, on my machine, it seems to think it's a VLC file, which is not going to open up as we would like it to, because it's not quite the right format. So please only use the .zip extension, a zip file. On Mac, that's very straightforward to do. So I can just take this here and I can just make this into a compress file, and I've got an archive. It's easy enough to do on Windows as well. So please just use the zip format. On the website, we've got this little packaging guide. We have it on this form. We've also got it in the resources section, and we're going to try and recreate this format. So there's a README, some instruments, and we want some photos as well. So I'm just going to create a new folder here, instruments. I'm going to do another one for images. And I'm going to take what we've got here. We've got a README here. The reason why README is helpful is it just can contain some information. If we lose your submission, we only see the file coming into Dropbox, we can check the README and find out who it was and get back in contact. So really helpful from that perspective. We've got that image here. Stick that in there. I've already got the grayscale. It's already 16:9, so that's all great. And then we're just going to move these guys into the instruments. Let's tidy that up a little bit. And now all we're going to do is create a zip file, and then we're ready to go. So that's all zipped. And now let's just double check that opens okay and has everything we want. That's great. What I'm going to do is I'm going to call it Palm Muted Schimmel. The last little issue that we sometimes get is people are not checking their samples and then submitting them again and again and again. Please just spend a bit of time, send it to a friend, because every time we get a new revision, it's just more work to do. So Fine, I'm just going to point out there's a checklist here. It goes through some of the things that we've talked about, making sure that we're using a relative path, putting all of our samples and everything into a single zip file format. Also including a photo. As we said before, the ideal photo would already be a black and white photo, no text overlay, also a 16:9 ratio, and just saves us a lot of work if it's already in the right shape. Final thing is just the terms and conditions. Just make sure you're happy that when you upload stuff here, people can just reuse your samples. They can put it into commercial material. That's kind of what you're agreeing to there. So that's it. All of this I really appreciate, because everything that you guys can do will really help speed up the process on our end. We have lots of submissions every month, and so if everyone just does their little bit of checking, it cuts down the amount of work we have to do centrally.
Thank you so much, Stephen, for your ongoing commitments to Pianobook. Without Stephen, no Pianobook. Next up, contact. I do understand that it is incredibly frustrating that there's a community offering up free sounds, yet they're largely made on a platform that is incredibly expensive. So I just wanted to point out that with every sample instrument, because we don't encode them, there are WAVs within the sample file. So whether that be an EXS or a contact version, you can actually dive in there and grab the WAVs and certainly put them into a platform of your choice, whether that be Halion or Mach 5. We just urge you to share those if you do that. However, Angus has got a little idea for us Logic users.
Hi everyone, it's Angus here with a quick tutorial on how to use Logic 10.5's new Autosampler plugin. So I've opened up the Requiem library here. Now there's two drawbacks to this sample instrument. The first being that it's in Kontakt full and you need to own the full version of Kontakt in order to do this. It can be pretty pricey. And the second being that each note uses 21 voices, so it can stack up pretty quickly. And obviously there's a lot of memory used, so I want to try and address this by creating a new EXS instrument. In previous versions, I could have dropped the audio files from the Requiem library into EXS. I can now use the Autosampler software to do that for me. So the first thing I'm going to do is set the sample range, which is C-2 to C7. And then I'm going to get it to sample every fifth semitone. I'm going to set the sustain to 6 seconds just to save on file size. And it's also got this great auto loop function, which means that automatically the new Logic sampler instrument is going to loop our samples for us. So all you have to do is name it and then hit start, and it's going to start sampling the instrument for you, and you can go away at this point and make a cup of tea. So that took around 3 minutes. So once it's done, let's see the result. So I'm going to open up Logic's new sampler. I'm going to go to the drop down, search for auto sampled and click Requiem. Now let's compare this to the Kontakt library. So I think there's a bit more compression going on with the auto sample, but all in all, a really good result considering the computer's done it for us. So another thing I'm just going to quickly look at now is just resampling the original sample instrument, but this time adding a plugin. So I'm going to open Valhalla's new Supermassive, and this is currently free from their website. So I really like the character of this preset, so I'm going to sample that. So I'm going to set the sustain slightly higher now. I did this thinking that potentially the auto sampler wouldn't be clever enough to not cut off the reverb tails, but it turns out I was completely wrong. And what it will actually do is sample the instrument for 15 seconds with the note held down, and then it will kindly wait for the reverb tail to end until there's zero gain coming out of the instrument. So I've cancelled it at that point because obviously the files are going to be massive if all of them are 15 seconds long. Cut it down to 6 seconds, start it again, and go and make myself another cup of tea whilst this samples itself. Again, this only took several minutes, so it's just a really quick way of speeding up your workflow. So let's give it a gander. Well, thanks for watching, guys, and I'll get these uploaded to the Requiem page on Pianobook.
Food for thought there indeed, Angus. And just to let the community know that the sample platform is something that I think about often, and that's an ongoing conversation. Would love your thoughts if you can share them down below. Talking of social media, earlier on I mentioned the Instagram thing. We've also set up a Pianobook YouTube channel. We put all of the sunrises on that, and that's going to be a host for us putting those great sunrises coupled with the amazing demos with your amazing instruments on the individual product pages. But I'm also hoping to use the YouTube channel to post up quick tips and clips that help the community. You'll notice link below is a quick tip to simply how to load an instrument into Contact, a question that a lot of people new to the community ask. Suggestions for what we can use this channel for would be much appreciated, again, in the comments down below. So do subscribe if you haven't done already. Ding that bell if you want to be notified the next time we put a film up. And one of those for Angus and Stephen and yourselves. Congratulations for the ongoing, unexpected, huge success that is Pianobook. I'll see you next time.